it's absolutely critical that that equipment is available where it needs to be, performing how it needs to be, and functioning. And that's why a lot more organizations now are looking at that proactive nature.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Resilient Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my two guests, Taylor and Elton. Taylor and Elton, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, singular. Would you like to introduce yourselves with maybe Taylor going first?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. I'm Taylor Smith, Chief Marketing Officer for a division of Honeywell called Productivity Solutions and Services. Honeywell is obviously a large organization. Our specific division helps bring barcoding and RFID solutions to really the global supply chain, finished good manufacturers, to warehouse logistics organizations, to retailers themselves. As I said, I'm currently leading our global marketing team, but have held global engineering development roles as well as some other smaller P&L leadership roles. So happy to be here, Tom. Thanks.
Super. Thank you. And Elton?
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me. Elton Saunders, Senior Director of Solutions and Services at Peak Technologies. Peak is a global integrator of all kinds of digital supply chain tools, mobile computers, thermal printers, RFID, machine vision. So I work mainly in supporting our professional services group, ensuring that we've got all the right talent to go out and actually integrate the products that we sell.
Nice. And the kind of theme that we're talking about today on the show is around building resilience through the likes of proactive maintenance, circular lifecycle management, automation, et cetera, things like that. So let's kick off with Taylor. Taylor, obviously, downtime used to be a nuisance, but now it's a real business risk. So from your perspective, what's driving the urgency around proactive maintenance today?
Yeah, from a proactive maintenance, it is really all about the uptime that you mentioned, Tom. But the urgency really stems all the way back to the customer and what we all expect as consumers as far as next day delivery. I mean, you travel around the world and now it's even 15-minute delivery. I was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago, and there's a number of organizations that are providing 15-minute delivery, which is a little excessive for me. But if those expectations are what consumers are driving and now what organizations have to deliver, the equipment that they're using, whether it's full-blown automation, whether it's the kind of mobile computers or scanners that our organization sells, it's absolutely critical that that equipment is available where it needs to be, performing how it needs to be, and functioning. And that's why a lot more organizations now are looking at that proactive nature.
Okay. And Elton, does that match what you're seeing, or are pain points shifting?
No, absolutely. For us, it's really looking at different types of management tools, mobile device management for the handheld computers, even for the printers now, really. It's a tool that allows people to kind of get the most value out of the product and really the most lifespan, right? So it's really kind of a proactive management from the very beginning when you purchase the product, and then, get all the right security patches in there over the lifespan and get as much life out of the product as you can.
Okay. And for both of you, what do you think are the biggest blind spots companies still have around device health?
Yeah, so I think one of them that we're seeing more and more, and it sounds kind of obvious, but it's battery management. I mean, it's you kind of take it for granted, but it really can cause issues with performance, and then just cycling those out, making sure that you get rid of them in a responsible way. Peak, Honeywell, all of us have tools to help this process, right? So we've got a tool called Peak Mobile Insights that can do a lot of, battery management statistics and help you see which batteries you need to get rid of.
Okay. And is that the same for yourself, Taylor?
Yeah. So we have a tool, Honeywell, that we call Operational Intelligence that Peak, which I can give a little bit of context for those on the call. So Peak is one of Honeywell's leading global resellers and integrators. So Peak is actually a customer to Honeywell to help then bring our solutions to the end customers and market. And so our solution, Operational Intelligence, which helps monitor Honeywell-specific tools, a lot of the time Peak and other organizations will integrate our capabilities into their more cross-platform tool to be able to manage other vendors and other agnostic hardware. So yes, we absolutely see that. We have some of our own tracking tools, and specifically as you look at device availability, there's quite a few things. Elton hit on one of them. Battery, very important. The other is actually the software ecosystem that a lot of customers now are really focusing on. Do I have the right version of Android operating system loaded? Do I have the right applications and applications versions loaded? Am I staying current for cybersecurity practices? Very important in a resilient state, because I mean, you can read in the news just about every week some company that's gotten impacted by a cybersecurity issue, which could take you down. So all of those we help really track and manage. And one very simple one that we're trying to manage is actually just the human factor. Devices go missing. And if they're missing and they're not available for the next shift coming in, it makes it hard for them to do their job or to do it at the level they need to meet those delivery standards that we talked about. So one of the key areas that we're really focusing on is how to prevent that, not purposeful theft. It's very hard to dissuade that, but the accidental. A lot of the times customers or users of our devices may leave them on a shelf somewhere accidentally or put them in their locker, and then they call in sick for a day or two. So we are coming up and building tools into that operational intelligence platform that help drive greater traceability, accountability, and check in, check out is one of the features that we call it to really help make sure that the products are there and available.
And do you find then that leaders at your client companies maybe struggle to invest in prevention rather than fixing things after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, buying insurance is always a little bit more difficult to justify than spending when it's to fix it. But I think most of the organizations that Elton and I deal with are multi-generational technology deployment now. Like I'd say probably close to 15, 20 years is kind of standard state for using these mobile computers, and heavily for 10 years. So they've been using it for 2 or 3 generations. And many of those executives or decision makers now understand and recognize the small things, or things that seem small. As Elton said, battery management, that can be extremely disruptive. And lots of customers now identify that, whether it's building it into their requests to say, I want a proactive battery replacement throughout the life cycle, or I want to make sure and I'll invest in this tool to monitor real time the health of the battery to know when to replace it. I don't know about you, Elton, but I'm seeing a lot more willingness to invest in these solutions up front because they've frankly been bitten in the past.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one thing, Taylor, that you mentioned that's really important is just like being able to update the devices over time, right? Because that's really what's going to drive. Nowadays, I think that we see more devices that when they reach their end of life, they're probably still a functional device. It's the security concerns. We can't upgrade, Android anymore in that device, or, there's no more security patches because it's just too old. So that kind of creates kind of this interesting thing where, you might still have a product that's functional, but really not secure. If I could tell my customers anything, it's really start thinking about the whole end of life. Like when they buy a product, how many years am I going to use this for? Is this a 3-year device or is this a 7-year device? And really ensure that they understand how to manage it throughout the entire process. And of course, we'll obviously help them with that with all the tools that we have and the expertise, but it's just something I think that people need to consider, especially when you look at like the larger the device, the larger sort of impact it has, just like the environmental impact to make the device is much more than it is to use the device for its entire lifetime, right? So it really makes a lot of sense to try to maximize the overall lifespan. Honeywell does a great job with different types of service contracts, right? So a customer can buy a device and for a certain number of years have complete confidence that device can be repaired and returned to service. Things like that. It's just, there's a lot of little pieces to the puzzle, but when you put them all in place, you really get a much better return on your overall investment.
Okay. And is there more of a focus now on designing devices for end of life, for repairability and reuse and recyclability at end of working life?
Yes. I mean, I would say very simply put, we go all the way back to the manufacturing state of Honeywell, in this case, we play an important part in the resilient supply chain in two fronts. First, where we're manufacturing, right? Rewind 3-4 years ago, we were heavily China-based manufacturing. Now with some of the tariffs and other importation rates really across the world, and knowing that you may be centralized there, we've expanded that manufacturing footprint to make our own supply chain resilient, to make sure we can deliver products to our customers. But additionally, then it's how we make the products. And some of our solutions where we can, we've actually tried to eliminate the battery. You heard from Elton that it's highly disruptive. On our mobile computers, you still need a battery given the size and compute power. On some of our Bluetooth barcode scanners that you may see in more simplistic barcode scanning use cases, we've completely eliminated the battery, gone to a big supercapacitor, which essentially gives the product infinite life. You don't have all the environmental waste of creating a lithium-ion battery or of disposing that, and really helps some of that sustainability nature as well. So yeah, I mean, we're really looking at it all the way back in the design and manufacturing as well.
Okay. And how is predictive or proactive maintenance, how is that changing how organizations think about their mobile devices and printers on the warehouse floor?
Well, I think it's still a conversation that we have to have with people, because I don't know that, I mean, preventative maintenance has been a theme. If you think about like thermal printers in different supply chain applications, that's been a theme there for, 20 years. I don't know that it always has the same, people are thinking about the same way when it comes to the mobile computers, right? Because it's either works or it doesn't. It's broken or it's not. You got a cracked egress window on the, where the scan engine is, things like that, right? So, but I think where you got to kind of shift that conversation a little bit isn't from just whether it's broken or not. That's part of it, right? That's where, like the service contracts and things like that, where you want to make sure that you're going to get the maximum lifespan. So have the maintenance contract. But I think when you buy a device, again, it goes back to a lot of like the software that I'm running. And what does the software lifecycle look like? What does that roadmap look like? And in 2 or 3 years, am I going to be okay on a particular version of Android for this piece of software? Large companies that maybe say create their own software for their internal supply chain applications, they've got kind of a leg up because they can be very nimble. So our largest customers, they really can kind of maximize the life of that product. But at some point, the product becomes end of sale, and there'll be like an end of support after that for, a number of years typically. And that's where, Honeywell does a great job providing us with security patches and things like that. But there's a point when there's no more security patches, right? So customers need just to be aware and just be, we can kind of help educate, but they should be asking those questions.
Yeah, and I think Elton hit on a good point regarding like fixed printers. We really need to, when you think about proactive, like preventative maintenance service plans for a larger fixed asset that is difficult to ship back and forth because of shipping costs. I think that's where customers are much more open, and the ROI makes sense to seek out a company like Peak to provide on-site preventative maintenance services. When it's a smaller product, then it becomes more where they want the tools to do it themselves, because it tends to be more software-based, as Elton said, or when to swap a battery. And you don't need to send any of us, Honeywell or Peak, to swap a battery. But it's the process that becomes very challenging. These are high turnover industries, right? So you imagine many of the warehouses or retailers in the supply chain, they could be 50 to 100% turnover in a year. So now you think of an employee coming in and they've never used this mobile device before. They don't know where to get a new battery. What do I do with the old battery? So even though we're starting to provide the tools digitally to help know when to update the software or when to replace the battery, it's really now helping take to the next level of how can those tools help instruct and guide someone through the process that may not know what to do to replace a battery, replace a printer, print head, update the software appropriately.
And do these organizations have access to the data from these devices? And if so, is there anything that particularly surprises them to discover once they start getting that data?
The short answer is yes. If they're buying any of the tools that Elton or I have spoke with, the organizations have complete access to the data. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, right? Sometimes it's overwhelming for them, and that's where they will enlist someone like Peak to provide a full managed service around that to analyze and view the data themselves. But the short answer is yes, it is available. And I'll give one point of maybe what's new, or maybe not new, but what it's insightful that people have seen in going back to the battery side of things. Historically, organizations have just really swapped batteries at a set time. Okay, 3 years into a device life cycle, let's swap the batteries because it's supposed to have degraded. And think of all of us, right? Whatever Samsung or iPhone you've been using, after 2 or 3 years, it has nowhere near the battery life when you walked out the first door. I usually can't make it through half a day of conference calls. Same thing with our devices, but our batteries are removable so you can swap them. And I think with these newer tools, what these organizations are seeing is based off the usage profile. If I have 5,000 devices across my network, I may only need to replace 1,000 because these other 4,000 are actually quite healthy based off of however they've been used. And so that insight helps lower their costs, helps be very targeted with the replacement and deployment.
Okay. Elton?
Yeah, I think we're kind of at a point where very soon we'll have much better predictive analytics. Like right now, for example, we know that, say like a print head on a printer, depending on the type of media that's running through there, it might last for, 1 million linear inches or 3 million linear inches, right? We can do some things now with like management tools where I can take a group of printers and when they've hit a certain threshold, I can move them into another group. This consider like a virtual group, on a dashboard. And then let somebody, work through that group and replace print heads, things like that. So we're real close. And I'm sure, maybe Taylor, something you can speak about a little bit, like operational intelligence. Like when we get to a point where the data that we're collecting really provides some better predictive. Like I think we're so close. We're getting there. Taylor made a great comment with the batteries. I mean, to know like which ones really do need to be replaced, and which ones don't, great cost savings, great, good environmental impact there. And I think that's kind of like the next step. And again, I think the data's there. Customers can, get access to it in different ways. And we do, for like Taylor mentioned, when we do like different types of, managed mobility, MSP type applications for our customers, we do try to leverage that data. We can look at, for example, when a software update gets pushed out, did anything change? Are we seeing like more reboots in the environment? So it's getting to a point where there's a vast amount of data there. I think automating it into different, we can gain insights because if we kind of know historical things, but we're right on the verge of where I think it becomes much more predictive.
Okay. And the fact that you're saying there's a whole slew of data there, I'm guessing then that this is where AI starts to kick in, or is AI still just a buzzword in this area?
Well, I can speak for the Honeywell side. It's absolutely starting to kick in. And so I'm going to have to go back to the engineering team, Elton, on your recommendation for predictive printhead failure. We're not quite there yet, but using AI, we are actually getting very close. And we'll expect to have something in our operational intelligence platform probably in Q1 of next year that will have predictive failure for battery life. And not catastrophic failure, but predictive in the sense that, okay, you've been using a set of products in your organization for a period of time. We've been tracking your usage profile. We understand what is the typical battery drain based off of the number of picks you're making in a warehouse and the scans and all this and that and the other. And now we can, using AI, kind of predict, will this battery last a shift based off of historical usage profile? And to that point, as Elton mentioned, yes, we're pretty excited and confident that, again, probably in the coming months, we'll be able to have a new feature that can predict kind of 30 days out that this specific battery is no longer going to be fit for purpose if your goal is to make it last a full shift. So AI is a big opportunity there. Some other areas as well that I can jump back to, but I don't know, Elton, if you had any thoughts on this first.
No, I agree. I kind of see it the same. we're just like right on the edge. Like and maybe it has something to do with just the data sets being large enough, to really have the predictive data. I've kind of thought that for a few years, that maybe that's what's, because, we actually have to capture all this data, and that's a big effort right there. But those systems seem to be in place now, right? So whether it's something like an operational intelligence, or we're, collecting data via the mobile device management software, it's there. And it's just right on the cusp of, I think, really allowing AI to start to find, again, more of those predictive actions that we can then utilize.
One other specific area that, again, where I'll call it beta right now, so it's a little bit more than an idea, proof of concept, but we have used AI for what we call anomaly detection in operational intelligence. So detect anomalies when across your population of 1,000 devices, is any specific device, or is the whole set of devices maybe rebooting more often, or applications crashing, or dropping network connectivity from your access points, or is the battery draining faster? And we focus on those areas because those four that I just mentioned are kind of the most common troublesome points when new software is pushed out. And typically, so now we use AI to detect those anomalies, automatically start capturing log files of the device, and then using standard AI tools like that Microsoft has now used in their development environment to analyze the log files and the crash codes to point back to specific software packages that may have been causing this disruption. And that's now all done automatically in hours and days, whereas I'm sure you're familiar with it, Elton, like that could take weeks or months in the past, as far as pushing out a piece of software, waiting for people to call in and say it's not working, sending people on site to get log files, people manually going through those. And you're able to condense that down so much now with AI.
Think about even just all the network data when something like that's not working, right? Doing like network traces, being able to bring all of that information back to all the data from the device itself. It's really good. I think, again, on the cusp of something really incredible, just to find errors quicker and just, be able to deal with them so much faster than in the past.
Yeah, it feels a bit like Minority Report from maintenance, catching breakdowns before they happen.
That's right.
Elton, once equipment reaches end of life, how are companies approaching things like trade-ins, refurbishment, or reuse?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, again, it's all about having that plan and kind of knowing when you're ready to start to move on to a new device. Working with Peak, working with Honeywell, looking at different like trade-in or buyback options, ensuring that the devices get disposed of properly. All of that can kind of work together. And really, customers can use that to their advantage to bring in their next generation of devices, right? So, we have, customers approach this in a variety of ways. Some don't think about it at all until they've got, a couple pallets of old devices that they need to get rid of. Others, look at it like, hey, this is basically money in the bank. I know there's value with these old devices. And so, there's always different types of options, again, trade-in programs, things like that. So we just really try to, guide the customers to the right program.
Okay. And how do you deal with the likes of data security or compliance when devices are reused?
Yeah. So, there is a whole process, right, of ensuring the device has been wiped properly before, getting rid of it. And it just very much depends on kind of how it's flowing. But if we take devices back in, we've got internal processes to deal with that and ensure that everything gets wiped properly. We try to work with partners on the disposal side that have good track records with proper disposal. But you're absolutely right. It's just ensuring that things get, wiped properly.
So let's fast forward to what's coming next. We've got the likes of automation, RFID, machine vision, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Taylor, there's a real shift towards automation. How do you see these technologies changing operations over the next few years?
Yes. Look, automation is going to be critical for many organizations just because of the labor pool. You can all look at different population statistics across countries around the world, and many of them are in decline, and there's going to be labor shortages. And so with that, automation is going to take hold. as far as a device side, we still believe that there's going to be a large play for devices and manual operations for the foreseeable future, particularly in that mid-market and downstream market, as really automation is being invested at the large tier one organizations. But the process shift is really going to be you may have heard the term cobots instead of robots. It's going to be that collaboration with employees and whatever automation or robotic systems are in place. And so as you look at, let's just stick with the mobile computer for now, that mobile computer may have to give different types of instructions or guidelines, or may also need to dual purpose to help figure out how to troubleshoot and maintain and repair the robot that's at a site or the automation that's at a site. And so that's really how we're thinking about it, is how can that device really be the go-to device for any employee, whether they're doing a traditional manual picking process, or now are they doing a more highly sophisticated technical support troubleshooting of automation that's there as well.
Elton, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. We look at automation, we know that there's more RFID machine vision applications all the time. And, what effect does that have on how many mobile devices are in the field? And I don't think that's shifting yet, but I bet it's certainly having an impact on the types of devices. And again, this goes back to customers looking at the entire life cycle. Do I need an extremely rugged device for an application? Or where automation starts to take effect, and like Taylor said, the idea, the kind of the cobot idea, maybe there's another tool that's doing a lot of the manual scanning for me. Maybe machine vision is doing all the scanning. I need a smaller device that fits in my pocket that I can look at dashboards or be notified if something's not working, right? So it may shift the type of device over time. But I think right now we're still a few years out from that. I think at some point it happens, right? And maybe there are, I don't know if it's going to be less mobile computers or just maybe different form factors. Yeah, at some point I think RFID and machine vision start to, eliminate some of, more of the manual process, right?
Yeah, and different capabilities in the mobile devices as well, right? So if we look at RFID and machine vision, many of those require fixed infrastructure. Whether it's expensive or not, or has ROI or not, that's for each customer and each use case, but it tends to be fixed infrastructure, a fixed portal for an RFID system or a mounted camera somewhere. The great thing about mobile computers is they're with you wherever they are. And now you can start augmenting those mobile computers with RFID reading, given some technology progress that Qualcomm has had with the recent chipset, or you've seen greater camera performance on the mobile computers than what was 1 or 2 generations ago, to be able to do some of this machine vision on the fly. Because if you're in a part of a warehouse where there is no RFID reader coverage or no camera coverage, you're still able to either read an RFID tag or perform certain machine vision inspection, use case detection using that mobile device as well.
That's a great point, Taylor. It really, if you think about the mobile computer, it's not really or RFID infrastructure, but you've got an RFID reader in the mobile computer, or, use the camera for analyzing images. Yeah, it really, that's a really great point, because it's complementary, and it'll probably keep being complementary for a very long time.
And what new resilience challenges does automation bring? You got cyber, complexity, maintenance of the machines themselves, something else entirely, all of the above?
I'm going to give a benefit to give myself time to think about the challenge. But I think one of the key benefits is the fact that it's automated. One of the biggest challenges in a supply chain being resilient is relying on the worker. Did they actually scan all the packages that came in from that truck that day? Did they scan and put it into the right shelf location? Whereas if you're now getting that from what we call a passive RFID scan, where the pallet's coming through and the fixed RFID sensors just read everything, regardless of what the employee is doing, because it has to pass through that receiving door, that eliminates a lot of potential inaccuracies and errors in the system, therefore kind of making that supply chain more resilient. resilient being against the human error. So that's kind of one of the major benefits of these kind of newer, again, more passive systems where it's a fixed camera or fixed RFID reader where intelligence is just kind of happening by the wayside. But as far as challenges, it's absolutely what you said. There's just more infrastructure to maintain, particularly from a cyber standpoint. But particularly on the camera side, I'd say you start getting into some of the challenges over privacy and what you do to obscure people's faces or data retention and video retention. And that's just something that organizations need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think, like building kind of resiliency into the application. So we've got a tool called Peak Analytics, which basically will take images from a scan tunnel, can be, any manufacturer's scan tunnel. One of the models that's built into that our customers really appreciate is if there starts to get like dust on the window of the camera, we can see that and notify them that they need a preventative maintenance visit or, somebody to go out and actually clean the lenses, right? So little things like that. I mean, the data is there. So I think a lot of times with these types of automation applications, it's what can I infer from, again, the image or something about how things are operating, and then make some decisions based on some of that data we're collecting there.
For people listening, if you could each give one piece of advice to supply chain leaders who are trying to make their operations more resilient and sustainable, what would it be? Maybe Taylor, you go first.
Yeah, I got to think through that one. Elton, do you have one off the top of your head?
Yeah, I would just say, think about the end goal, the overall life cycle of what you're purchasing and what you're trying to do. And with mobile computing, you plan out how long you plan on using that device, and let us work with you to put a plan together to really maximize that entire lifespan and the whole management process. People they think, oh, this is just this is so core to my business. It's just a scanner, and then. But really, you got software running on there that needs to be updated and patched. Again, we're getting so close with some of the predictive analytics that we can certainly at least take the data now and kind of help you make better decisions about when to, again, replace batteries, or if something's not working right, we can be, proactive there. So I think it's just working with the partner to just get the most out of that whole life cycle of the product. And then at the end of it, whether it's 3 years or 7 years, we'll work with you to, are there trade-in programs available? Can we make sure that you get rid of these devices in a safe fashion? And I don't know, just really we want to partner with people throughout that whole process, because there's tons of opportunity to just improve, and really get just a long life out of their purchase.
Okay. Taylor?
Yeah. Now that I had a little time to think here. I mean, I guess my advice would be just going back to that kind of age old, it's people, it's process, it's technology. So as you're looking at making your operations more resilient, it's one thing to have a great piece of equipment, but you need to make sure you have the processes around making sure it is there and available, making sure that you have the right people and supervisors and managers that are holding people accountable or utilizing some of the digital and software tools that Elton and I shared about today to manage their population of IT equipment or assets that their employees are using. And it's not enough to have any one of those. It's really how you bring all three in concert to really make sure that you can drive a resilient organization.
Great. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, folks. Is there any question that I didn't ask that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you feel it's important for people to be aware of?
I don't.
That's a tough question. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, nothing's jumping out at me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So then a final question. If people would like to know more about yourselves or any of the things we discussed on the podcast today, where would you have me direct them? Taylor, you go first.
Yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn, or I'm also happy to take direct emails to my work address, which is taylor.smith@honeywell.com.
Excellent. And Elton?
Yes, Peak Technology. So that's going to be peaktech.com. And I'm active on LinkedIn, Elton Saunders. There's not a lot of Eltons, so it's easy to find me.
Okay, great. Super, folks. That's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tom. Really appreciate it.